And I want to give you just a couple of updates on what's been going on in our legislative office and the legislative process. For many of you already know that we're not necessarily at the pace of voting on bills, but we've been hard at work putting our office together. We have some of our team here. I just wanted to acknowledge our district director, Ms. Tony Bryant. And she's going to be very important because she's going to be one of your main points of contact when you're trying to get in contact with the office. As we've been working on our district office, the next thing that we're working on is our district, as we've been working on our capital office, the next thing we're working on is our district office, which is going to be housed at Fair Park. And so that's where Tony's going to be there to answer questions that constituents may have if you want to come in and talk with our office. And so there are a couple of areas that we're working on in the legislative office. One is reinvesting in economic growth and community stability. And what does that mean? As areas around House District 100, places like South Dallas, places like West Dallas, places like Oak Cliff, and they continue to grow economically, our office is working hard to make sure that communities are not displaced unnecessarily, that we're working to do things to help with property tax increases, and working as hard as we can to make sure that bills are going to go in the 88th legislation that's supporting property tax relief. Another area that we're looking at is improving healthcare access and inequalities. So we're working with our hospitals, community health organizations to make sure that we're providing strong clinical as well as mental and physical health services in and around Dallas County. We're working to support our public education. We just had an announcement that we're supporting Representative James Tallarico bill to provide a $15,000 increase to public school teachers in our schools. We're also making sure that we're supporting retired teachers, which there's a bill by John Busey that's supporting an automatic cost of living increase based on inflation for future years. So public education and making sure that our schools, our support staff in our schools, as well as our students are being supported is something that's going to be huge. And last, equality for all Texans. We're fighting hard to make sure that we're continuing to fight for economic justice, social justice, LGBT equality in our office, because we know that there's going to be a lot of attacks on key communities, particularly where we're talking about so many issues that are going to be extremely important. And this year, I just wanted to end with talking about a couple of things that we know we're going to be talking about right now. Of course, I've already mentioned property tax relief. There's already been a conversation about the budget surplus and where the extra resources are going towards supporting in a budget surplus. There's also key issues around voting rights that are coming up in the 88th legislative session, and also I think those are the main issues that are coming up right now. But I definitely want to work to keep you all updated with our legislative office. For those who may be planning trips, I know several of you talked about some advocacy days that are coming up to the Capitol. My office is open. We are in the Capitol Extension E2404. Our office is open to you at any time. And so I wanted to stop there and use the rest of my time for any questions that anybody may have. Thank you.
So what's your opinion of the school choice bills nowadays?
I think that we have to make sure that, well, I do not support vouchers. I can say that very clearly. I think that we have to support public schools right now, and that's making sure that we're putting funding into those schools to be able to operate at the level that they need to be able to teach our students and be able to provide the salaries that are needed for our good teachers at our schools.
Buenos días, good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome here to Chorizo Menudo again. Thank you. My name is Renato Los. I'm with the LULAC Education Centers. I've also worked with the Vote Center Advisory Committee here in Dallas County. I'm a volunteer with that group. But one of the questions that we're wrestling with right now is the cost of the actual vote centers to the communities, and then also the number of those vote centers that we can afford to have for like municipal elections and other elections, the local elections. Those are as important, or sometimes even more important, because that's where people who are getting started with their career running for office and public service often get started in those school board, city council, and those other types of elections. Is there something that you can tell us that maybe you might recommend to help the local municipalities or the elected jurisdictions to help pay for the cost of those elections? There are some fairly strict rules about how each entity has to pay for what percentage and such of the cost of elections. Have you been able to look at that? Are you aware of that situation? And what would you recommend possibly for that to help some of the jurisdictions that can't afford the growing cost of elections?
Well, I can say that that's actually not an area I'm as familiar with, but I definitely want to try to learn a little bit more. My background, I served as an election judge in Oak Cliff, and I think some of the biggest challenges that we had, and I think that's important for Oak Cliff and around the Dallas area, is making sure that we have really strong election workers, so that we can make the case of the need of more centers to be able to vote. A chief complaint I've heard when the conversation has come around reduction of election centers is, well, we don't have enough people to staff X amount of centers in these areas. So making sure that we're doing a lot of recruitment on the front end to show that there's an interest for people to be able to work in those spaces, that we need to advocate that the wages are fair in those spaces, so that, like you say, you can't have that entry into working elections and also the experience of running for office if you choose to do so, after that time. But I'd love to talk with you more just about that issue, to be able to learn, about where we are in the process.
Thank you. And that's a follow-up question on that. There's a lot of controversy about the schools as a vote center, safety issues. During the general election, November elections are on Tuesday, so that's the day when normally schools are in session. Some districts recently have taken a approach to have a holiday or a student holiday on that day. So the teachers still have to report to work, but the students don't. In a measure of safety, increased safety. What's your thought about having Texas have an election day holiday or a school holiday for the students to allow for more safety and security, so that we don't have to deal with the security issues? We have Uvalde in our minds.
Right.
We don't want to have anything like that occurs and someone take advantage of an election like that. What's your thought about holiday for Texas for elections like that?
Well, I think that overall we have to really take a look at school safety, from a bigger lens of not just during elections, but also 365 days a year, and making sure that we're doing everything that we can to have safety, in our schools, and go through the processes necessary to secure our campuses. As it relates to Election Day, I think that there are a number of benefits of having a holiday, to be able to have time for families to be able to go vote, for children to be able to be with their families, while they're voting. And so I think that for a number of reasons, it makes a lot of sense to be able to have time off to be able to participate in, voting in your local, your state elections.
Ben, one thing that I've noticed, and just jumping on the question with Ray about voting in local elections, we have it in May, around the first weekend of May or something. That also coincides with the Cinco de Mayo. As a person that's worked on campaigns, especially in the Pleasant Grove area when I used to live out there, I try to get a lot of people to go in and do early voting. And it's still a challenge. It's challenging to get people to vote. But during the city election year, when it happens in May, it's always around the Cinco de Mayo weekend. And I've talked to a lot of friends that, hey, go vote? Well, I'm at Joe Pool Lake right now having a good time.
Right.
Or I'm at Judy's off Knox Henderson and having a good time. So it's always a challenge, because it's not Cinco de Mayo is not officially a holiday, but it's just a place to go have a drink and have a good time, and people get confused on what they're celebrating. I think to increase, my opinion, my perspective, to increase voter turnout is not to have it in May during Cinco de Mayo week, especially with Latinos and even African American people up there. So we just need to look at that. We're trying to increase voter. It's always been the lower percentile. I personally want to change Texas blue. We're good in Dallas County, but we need to go across the state with that. And I think one of the things that we need to look at is when the actual voting is. There's people that talk, and I'm one of them, there's people that want to celebrate the weekend more than voting. And it's just move it away from that single amount weekend. It's just something I know will increase it, because they won't have nothing else on their mind to go out there. But just something that we need to look at as a state legislature to increase voting. So I wanted to share that with you, Bill.
Thank you.
I know you started about Hanukkah Garland. I understand that, people were talking about the pay raises for teachers. Please don't forget us retired people. We have not seen an increase for us in a long time. And also, our insurance premiums are going to go up. The school districts have not contributed anything. For the last 20 years, it's like $75, that's all they pay. But please consider us when you're out there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for raising that.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is a graduate of GCU, and then she went to SMU Law School. She's been working with the Dallas County Prosecutor's Office for over 10 years. She worked as Chief of the Felony Court and Deputy Chief of the Family Violence Division, and she is now the Chief of the Animal Cruelty and Community Prosecution Division of the Dallas County District Attorney's Office. Let's give a big hand to Jessica Clavicio.
Thank you everybody for the invitation. I am Chief of the Animal Cruelty Unit, but I also do the community prosecutions. That includes the satellite offices and working with our local schools. So part of my job is to prosecute crimes against animals. Not necessarily when an animal bites somebody or when an animal hurts somebody else. It has to be a crime against an animal. So for example, right now I think everybody's thinking about that monkey case and the monkey was taken. That is part of our cases, but we are also working with the feds because we tried to take an endangered species tiger. So one of the things we also do is we do satellite offices, and there's 4 satellite offices that I have open. There's one in the Genesis Women's Shelter, there's one in Grand Prairie Police Department, one in Cedar Hill Police Department, Lancaster Police Department, and then Irving Advocacy Center. What we do there is that I have 2 victim advocates. They're bilingual. If you want to get screened for protective order, you can go in and do it. You can call. You can send an email. Anything you need to get screened for protective order, we can help you. Okay? There's Spanish specifically because I know a lot of the Hispanic community doesn't understand how protective order works and how it's not an overnight thing. It's a process. So I encourage you guys to let anybody in your community know that if they feel they need a protective order against a significant other, a family member, or even a friend, go ahead and call either the DA's office or email us or do anything you can because we can get you set up to get screened. Second, I also do programs with the schools. Dr. Garcia and I have talked a lot about this, that I need to get prosecutors in the schools so that we change that view that a lot of them have about the criminal justice system. So if they see who I am as a prosecutor in the criminal justice system, where I came from 2 parents who were born in Mexico and they immigrated to the United States so I could be born here. They worked 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. every day cleaning offices so that I could be where I am today, okay? And they need to understand that just because I'm a prosecutor doesn't mean I came from a different lifestyle than they did. And so I think I worked with Eric at SMU Law School, and he taught me about consumer rights when I worked with him in a clinic. And so I want the kids in our schools to understand that if they stay in school and if they look to their teachers, to their, their school counselors, that's who's going to be their mentor. Because my parents couldn't teach me about what it's like to go through the educational system and the American system because they didn't know any better. So they need to look to their teachers, they need to look to their school counselors, their principals, because that's who's going to be their mentor. They're not the enemy, they're a friend. And so anything I can do to help with going out there and talking to schools that you guys may want us to go talk to, I have about 30 or 40 prosecutors that volunteer on a rotating basis. I can get them out there. So anything we can do with protective orders, helping victims of domestic violence, the kids, and obviously if you suspect that there's an animal in your community that's being treated cruelly, abused, not fed, if you see them locked up in the backyard with no food or water, that's a crime. If you see them on the balcony with no food or water, that's a crime. Go ahead and call and make a report. But I really thank you guys for having me, and any questions that you may have about my community prosecution unit, animal cruelty, family violence, anything, I'm more than willing to answer. Yes, sir.
Mine is specifically, mental health is a big issue.
Yeah.
And what I'm understanding, what I'm reading, and what I have personally with friends that have mental health issues, and most are drug induced,
Sure.
but they're now a resident of the county.
Okay.
So their crime may not really be big, but because they were walking in the street, talking to themselves, and yes, they may have had a warrant based on such a great situation, and other people are use those people vulnerable to, hey, go in this bank and cash this check,
Sure.
and I'll give you half the money and all that. We're not addressing the health issue by incarcerating these people. So I didn't know what your viewpoint on that is, or insight from someone that's inside to help address this issue.
System, sure. So I don't know if you've read a lot about what Judge Chorizo does. So he's very much a treatment-based, district attorney. So just because he has a drug problem doesn't necessarily mean that he's a lifelong criminal, right? So we do our best to make sure that we differentiate somebody who's an addict to somebody who's a seller to someone who's just a violent person, right? So if you're telling me you like to assault your wife 10 times and it's because you like to drink a lot, that's a little bit of a blurry area, right? So can we help him get, alcohol treatment to make sure he doesn't get violent and help him deal with his anger issues? Or is it a guy that has a genuine drug addiction that falls into that cycle? We help those. We do what's called a pre-trial assessment, which means that we go through a process of asking them questions, looking at their history, looking at what kind of drugs he is, looking at how old he is or how old she is, where was she found. And so a lot of times we just do everything we can to get them to get treatment. It's hard because I can tell them all day long that that's what they need and they got to tell me, no, I want my back time. And it's a vicious cycle, but we do everything we can. At some point we have to force them, so that's when we go through different avenues. But yes, we very much now, Judge Chorizo has harped us since day one that we need to learn how to differentiate between an addict and a criminal. Okay, so I promise you, we're doing it's taking a little bit longer. That's why the jail pop has gone up, and I know the commissioners are really angry at us, but that's because it's taking a little bit longer for us to evaluate the case. We're not just moving them out, waiting for them to come back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So in our community during the pandemic, there were a lot more dogs joining SPCA, a lot more new pet owners who pick up animals from the animal shelters. Have they, and a lot of them were never pet owners before, so have they been taught about how to treat their animals when it comes to not leaving their dogs outside, eating them, and your especially animal cruelty?
Yeah, so I think when the pandemic hit, everybody got a dog when they were really late, right? And so then when they went through the process of rehoming them, meaning like I have to go to work now so I can't take care of you. But I think there's just people that it doesn't click in their mind that you shouldn't do this to an animal. You shouldn't leave them in 100-degree heat without food or water. You shouldn't go into the store for 3 hours and leave your dog locked in the car. So we could teach them, and we do everything we can with public service announcements, with our social media. I know that SPCA gives you like a little handbook on what you're supposed to do. But really, I think it's common sense that you're supposed to give your dog food and water. So we can teach them, but unfortunately, a lot of people just don't do it. It's just easier not to, right? So we try to give them the literature they need, but it's hard for us to make it.
Are they being treated? Are citation or what's the?
We go through the process of the investigation, so we see, okay, this dog hasn't had any food or water. We get them evaluated by a vet. So right now, that's kind of where the murky waters is. We used to use SPCA. Right now, we're just relying on the cities to use vets that will do it for them and go from there. But we do have to have a vet evaluation, usually to prove that the animal is suffering or something like that, because it's really hard to ask an animal if he was in pain when he was hungry, right? So we have to use medical stuff. Or neighbors. Neighbors tell us they've been there for 5 days, no food or water. Really witness statements. That's what I'm saying. If you see something, absolutely call it in and make sure you get the details of how long that dog has been out there without food or water. Or chained up. That's another big thing. If they're chained up and they don't have access to food or water, that's also a class A. Yes, ma'am.
Couple of things. You brought up the brought up that you are from Mexican background, your parents are immigrants. I'd like to share about a case that we had recently, actually during COVID. We had someone in the community that had their puppy, they were taking care of themselves, they were taking care of the dog. Unfortunately, the dog had an infection. She tried to do some remedies at home. We went our own way. And because whenever she tried to take him to the vet, unfortunately, it was too expensive for her to pay out of pocket. Later, the police showed up to her house that there was a case about animal cruelty, and she was arrested. We undocumented, and she was automatically but isolated. At the same time, for that same case, her husband was also being accused, and later he was also had to turn himself in, facing deportation proceedings. It was a huge campaign done locally to prevent the deportation. So when you say there's an investigation, how long is that investigation before you actually start arresting folks? Before you see that there was an intent to even turn in the dog, for example, turning the dog for support, but unfortunately they were not receiving support from the SPCA, for example.
Sure, so is this a Dallas Police Department case? Yeah, so they have a specific unit, they have 3 full-time detectives and 2 rotating command staff. It takes about a month to investigate one of these cases, and it's not just it looks like they didn't do what they were supposed to do. They go through the process, they go through the vet. So I don't know what the facts of the case are, but I'm pretty sure they had a vet statement that would, for us to corroborate us filing a case. I don't know if the case was filed or not, but we need these probable cause, and that usually comes from a vet statement. It sounds like your friend is in an unfortunate set of circumstances because some people do, get caught up in the animal park. By the time they try to get it help, it's too late, but for months and months and months, they didn't take care of the animal. So it takes about a month. Sometimes it takes up to 6 months to investigate a case. So it's not an overnight thing. There's a lot of moving parts. That makes sense.
Yeah, well, at the end, the case was dismissed, and they were able to prove that they did all the that they
Sure.
They were able to, because of the community organizing, they were able to protect the community for both the events. So that's why I was wondering, as far as the investigation, because it looks like
Yeah, so, I'm sorry to hear they had to go through that, but usually we issue a PC if they don't voluntarily come in and talk to us. But really, we need both sides, and a lot of times people are just afraid to talk to us, and it gets them in more hot water. So if they just explain the situation, maybe it helps us, me as a prosecutor, make a determination whether or not it's a case I need to accept. Because I do all my intake on animal cruelty cases, so even though the Dallas Police Department filed the case, that doesn't mean I'm going to accept it. I can reject it and tell them I don't think we need it, I don't think it meets what the law meant to do, or I don't think it's the right thing. So we have a lot of discretion. So I'm sorry that here they had to go through the process and ultimately, have to go through the restrictions. Yes, ma'am.
I want to piggyback a little bit on what she said about people not standing up, and we all talk about it. You see something, say something. As a founding member of Unidos, that is one of the issues that we really try to bring into our community, to our Latino community, because we want them to feel comfortable and we want them to feel safe if they see something, to say something. But then we have issues like that.
Right.
So then people just don't want to say anything. They just, mejor se quedan callados. So I would like to see some kind of programs. Maybe one day you can come and visit our Unidos program in Garland and talk to our people a little bit about, what you all do, how you work, what you do. So I'll get with Pedro Barano and see if we can invite you to come and visit and speak at our next Unidos program.
I love that, because for 10 years I've been advocating on domestic violence. People don't report domestic violence against themselves or family members because they're afraid they're going to get caught by immigration. That is not the case. We do not look at that. Our only sole objective is to make people safe, and that doesn't include asking her for her immigration background if she has papers. Yeah, we can help her later on with an e-visa or VAWA, all that good stuff. But if they don't report it, we can't get that process started. And I would like to speak to anyone in the community that I can tell them in Spanish, if you report it, you're not going to get in trouble. This is for your own safety. In fact, it might help you if you're a victim.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? All right. Well, I thank you guys for your time, and I appreciate everything you guys do as community members showing up to these events.
Thank you. All right, our next next speaker is a graduate from the University of Georgia. She has a Master of Arts in Education and Leadership from Aragosa University. In addition, she has served as the National Community Art Manager for A Window Between Worlds in Los Angeles, Chair for the District 12 Arts Task Force in Atlanta, and she has now been appointed as the new Director of Office of Arts and Culture for the City of Dallas. Let's give a big hand to Martina Elsie Felipe.
Hello, Martina Felipe. So it's a pleasure to be here. I want to say thank you to Jesse for the invitation. I'm simply here to make the introduction. I'm so grateful to be here in front of all of you. I see Raphael just a superstar. So I am here, new in Dallas. I'm relocating from Atlanta. Literally in the process of relocating. So forgive me for being a little frazzled because I missed the winter wonderland I was for that week. I'm really grateful for my appointment to relocate here to Dallas and service to the city on behalf of the Office of Arts and Culture. My background, many of you have read that my parents are also immigrants from Haiti and from Cuba. I was raised in New York, very deeply steeped in Haitian culture. And so some of you have asked already, do I speak Spanish? I speak French. French was my first language, French and Haitian Creole. And I don't speak Spanish yet, but something tells me that I'm going to get there very soon. My background professionally is in arts administration. And I have had the pleasure of working in very different sectors with that same thread of arts integration, arts equity, ensuring that youth have access to really transformational experiences in the arts. I've worked for the education system and Atlanta Public Schools, worked for the city of Atlanta on the mayor's side and on our Atlanta City Council side in support of again, Office of Cultural Affairs, similar to our Office of Arts and Culture here. And I am really thrilled, specifically because our city of Dallas focuses in the office have to do with the racial equity plan and of course the city's cultural plan. And I am absolutely thrilled to ensure that we're moving forward in regard to our department progress measures as outlined in the racial equity plan. What's important to me in this transition, onboarding in the office, is to ensure that internally our staff feels really good. And of course, I've been here now maybe 2 months almost, and I'm getting ready to focus sharply on our facility managers, ensuring that they have what they need, that they feel supported. I am combing through our organizational chart to ensure that we have some attention and focus to equity pay, again, to ensure that we're retaining superstars like Raphael, make sure that they leave our office, they continue to serve the community. And not only do I, obviously, it matters to me that we feel good internally, but it also matters to me that the office looks good externally. And so part of my transition plan has to do with these types of meetings, getting with our external stakeholders, learning about the nature of our relationship as the office with our community partners, and prioritizing what I can do to ensure that those partnerships improve. Iron, I tell people that all the time. I'm all about ironing those up that are wrinkles in the system, ironing those out to ensure that we're doing our best. Another tenet of my background has to do with arts integration in the trauma-informed sector. I was listening to Jessica, thinking about some of the work I've done in the past across the nation, working with police departments, domestic violence organizations, folks who serve victims of sexual crime, sexual assault, folks who work with the unhoused community, and using the arts to build the bridges that will help folks better serve clients that they work with to that end. I am someone who truly believes that arts can transform trauma, whether that's the clinical path or the non-clinical path. And of course that the arts build bridges and connect us all. Whether you are a practicing artist or not, there's always an open door for you. It's important to me that as one of the tenets of our racial equity plan, that we begin to spread the wealth and resources that the city has to support our marginalized community members, our Black and Brown community members, and ensuring that they have what they need as artists and arts organizations to continue producing quality work, to continue getting rid of some of these barriers in access to arts experiences. And of course, to ensure that community members who may feel marginalized or like they can't reach some sides of town to have certain experiences, that we are making very concerted, obvious efforts to, again, use the arts to build those bridges to ensure that folks are feeling invited or feeling like we'll always reach out to whoever they are to ensure again that they have that kind of access. I always like to share that I'm a trained dancer. I was raised in New York, I trained in dance in New York, and something that's important to me as a trained dancer sitting in a leadership position now, you may find that folks who have held this role before, if they were practicing artists, they probably weren't dancers, because dancers don't necessarily always get to break certain glass ceilings in arts administration on the business side. Usually you'll find folks who have been trained in theater or visual artists or musicians, and they kind of have a more straight path to leadership roles. So I'm really grateful that everything I learned in dance training, which has a lot to do with being flexible, with bringing your whole body and your whole mind to the work that you're doing, with rehearsing and practicing so that when it's time to perform, you're ready to do that very well. And what's most important to me in regard to applying my dance training to the work that I do is that I am well versed in doing difficult things in a graceful manner. And so while I understand there are many challenges artists will have in this transition that historic and new, what's important to me is to ensure that we do all things with grace, that I meet all of you with respect. I've been warmly welcomed here in Dallas. Many of you probably got invitations of like a party every week for the last several weeks, and I've been really emotionally overwhelmed by that. But it helps me understand that this is a well-deserved step personally and professionally, and that this community is so open and ready for transition, for new ways, new perspectives, for diverse minds, and what we have to offer to each other, and I'm really excited. And I want to, before I open for Q&A, remind you that I am new, okay? So, but again, thank you to Jesse. Again, thank you. Okay.
Buenos dias and welcome to Dallas. My question to you is basically that, as I said earlier, I work with an educational nonprofit, and we often when I search for grant opportunities, we see a lot of things that promote STEM and the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Rarely do we see things that will help reach out to support students in the arts, in what we in Spanish call bellas artes. Do you see your role as, in terms of working with the school district or others in the community to promote arts education, and particularly how other nonprofits and community organizations can get invested and involved in that type of project?
So some of the recent work that I completed in Atlanta on behalf of the Atlanta Public School System was to begin ensuring that elementary and middle schools can become STEAM certified. So you have STEM programming, of course, which is your science, tech, engineering, and math. And folks always want to leave out that A, which to me is the most important letter, the arts. And so one, focusing on how the arts can extend learning in some of these other core content areas, whether it's English language arts, math, science, always focusing on that arts integration key. For school systems, that includes actually carving out a role on staff to ensure that there is someone who is a master teacher in that vein, in arts integration, in support of those core contents. Because if you're going to be in the education sector, you're going to have to talk that talk. And you're going to have an understanding that in most settings, arts are secondary, but they are extremely, extremely important and extremely beneficial. They're a language, you can't reach certain kids who may have language barriers, who may have special needs, who may not perform as well in those core contents. That's the arts that are saving folks, that are, again, building those bridges and ensuring that kids have another route to success. And for schools, that STEAM certification that have not even started to work with our school districts quite yet, but I do intend to build that bridge as well, because STEAM certification is prestigious for schools, and again, it shows that although technically arts can come as secondary, schools are pushing up and ensuring that that arts integration model is how we're ensuring that it's spread, no matter whether you're in a formal arts class or if you're core content, that there's is a presence. It's important and significant. As far as community organizations in support of that notion, I don't, in my work in Atlanta, it was pretty much a direct line. We worked with our Department of Education and then our local school systems to ensure that we can have achievements in regard to STEAM certification. I think I would take that same route here. And I would love to work closely with you to see how we can make that happen.
Let me show you real quick, the audience here.
Yes.
Hey, if you've ever been to an exhibit by the mall, the Mexican Historical League, founded by the gentleman over there, Albert Gonzalez, and my father, and the former president, Albert Gavieta, who was her boss's uncle. If you've ever been to a DeMall presentation at the Latino Culture Center, raise your hand if you've ever been there. If you've ever been to a play by Academia Theater Company that I'm on the board, Deferred Action, raise your hand. Thank you. If you've ever been to a play from Teatro Dallas by Cora Cadona, raise your hand. If I owe you a drink, raise your hand. So there's a lot of people in the audience that have supported, especially this man behind me, that the Latino Culture Center, which is strong, that we need to keep funding, have the access that we have in there, and so not so much of the question, but I want to continue to support that Academia and Teatro Dallas are the resident theater company of the Latino Culture Center, which will bring audience to that place, to that, the jewel of the city is referred to, and then we need to keep doing that and make sure that we sign on the dotted line, because we're still going through that transition, that process, make sure that happens. So I hope you support that, because there's a lot of people here that you're always welcome to come that support that, those several missions there.
Absolutely.
Thank you, just wanted you to know that.
Absolutely. That's beautiful to see so many patients. Thank you all for your support of our sector. There was Andrew.
Good morning. Welcome to that.
Thank you.
At the current time, are there any programs in the public parks other than athletics, basketball and such, where they, after school, the city could supply art supplies, and maybe an artist from the community or an art teacher could go into the community and work on art. And while they work on art, they can tutor. In other words, you can't touch the brush, you can't touch the covers until you master your mathematics, you master your homework. So we use art as a reward for good grades. And the Parks and Recreation have plenty of room to do theater and dance. And does the city do that now?
So, we have several in the Office of Arts and Culture, community arts programs where we are partnering with artists to move into various communities around town to service youth, to service our elders, and we're just supporting these artists with whatever programming is approved. So you bring your programming to us and apply for grant funding so that you can do what you do best.
Every city park, where you have elementary schools, middle schools, within walking distance
Of course.
of the park.
Of course.
And it would be great after school for the kids to be artists.
Agreed, I agree. So while we do partner with our Department of Parks on various programs, we share parks and buildings and work together in support to that end. As far as after-school programming is concerned, we don't have a direct line of partnership with parks to that end. However, if an artist in the community wanted to do such programming, had an after-school program idea, needed funding for that to come to life, they could apply with our office in supporting such things. But there was one thing you said that I wanted to be sure to respond to about using the arts as a reward for children who master schooling. I don't happen to agree with that line of thinking because I don't think that folks should look at the arts as a carrot or a reward, or that there's a barrier to being able to participate in the arts, because in many instances, arts are saving kids, right? So you don't want them to feel like if they don't necessarily have the educational acumen to be very successful in a particular content area, that they won't be able to have an experience in the
On the
arts.
same token, if they have the aptitude to do well in school, and they choose not to do well, teachers could look at the records of the students and say, hey, this person is tested at a seventh grade level and refuses to do their work. So it's hard to say in blanket. Of course, if the child isn't able to do work, but if the child is able to do work, it's like don't ask, don't play. Go to class, don't play. There's a lot of talented football players that step up to the plate and pass because they want to play.
Understood. I appreciate your perspective.
Anybody else before we close up here? No? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Again, and I know you're new, so you'll get to know a lot of people in this room that are involved in the arts and cultura, whether in various forms. Our next speaker is a product of Grand Prairie ISD. He attended Mountain View College and received his BA from the University of Texas, Arlington. He was a teacher in South America teaching English. He then came back home, and in 2015 he was elected the youngest member of the Grand Prairie Independent School District as a trustee. He is now working as a deputy constable also with Michael Orozco's office, and he may have an announcement or not today. Let's give a big hand to David Espinosa.
Buenos dias. I first want to thank LULAC 102 and National LULAC President Domingo Garcia for inviting me today. So let's give him a round of applause. Second, my parents came today so they can hear me speak and take pictures. So let's give them a round of applause. Born in Dallas, Parkland specifically. I moved to Grand Prairie, make it exciting. I was raised in Grand Prairie my entire life. Went to Grand Prairie schools. My mother retired from the school system. Nieces and nephews currently go. Great nieces and nephews currently go to Grand Prairie schools. So we're all Grand Prairie. I first ran in 2015, and the only person that believed in me and gave me my first campaign contribution was Domingo Garcia, and he gave me $1,000, and I'm always grateful for that because he's the only one that believed in me. Everyone else would tell me no, and I got my first campaign donation. I've been re-elected to the school board 3 times, 8 years I've served, and Domingo has always supported me along with Miss Elba Garcia. Thank you for always supporting me. I'm a diagram of what I've done as a school board member. We've done a lot, and I've actually helped to try to do a lot. And right now, we are the majority. I can say that now in Grand Prairie schools. We are majority for vote. I was the first Mexican, descendant of Mexican, to serve on the Grand Prairie School Board. I was elected single member district with a lawsuit. I was the product of a lawsuit for single member districts. And since being on the board, we have 3 blue ribbon schools. We've, and I can say this proudly, Grand Prairie Schools has the highest paid teacher salary, new teacher salary in the DFW, North Texas area, at $61,000 a year. New teacher, so a starting teacher makes $61,000 in Grand Prairie Schools. That's the highest paid in the DFW right now. So we have our experience. Our experience is March the 4th at 9 a.m. We are a choice school, so choice is different. It's, we dropped the word choice. It's unique in Grand Prairie. Choice is parents that live within Grand Prairie schools can choose whatever school their kid wants to go to. So we have schools like STEAM, which is the Sam Rayburn STEAM Academy. We've included that A in there with the arts. We've have an art school, which is the Grand Prairie Fine Arts Academy. That's nationwide. That's also a blue ribbon school in the nation. What else? Our LULAC students, our LULAC council, there's some people in this room that have helped pave the way for our LULAC at Grand Prairie High School to be strong in that. And let's give a round of applause to Ms. Gracie Cortez, her husband. Our LULAC students in Grand Prairie have won national awards that Mr. Domingo Garcia has given. That has never been seen before in Grant and GPISD. And thanks to the diversity of the new board members like Mr. Ryan Barra that's here in the stands today, he's also running for re-election. But we've done so much to help our students in Grand Prairie ISD. The other thing that I want to tackle is our voter drive. And I want to recognize Mr. Eric Cedillo that we would like to partner up and get with his program that he's leading, to get more students involved and to vote. And so that's one of the things that I want to tackle these next 3 years. But everything that I've said when I first ran, I've done. Our student safety, we've helped create an emergency management director position. In case of emergencies, that has to do with all emergencies, even student mental illness. So we have all that. And one thing I want to talk about is everyone has noticed that Jeff Bezos' ex-wife or wife gave us $16 million. That $16 million, we are watching it closely. And one of the things that I want to start off with, 5 things. We're going to receive the funds, invest them securely until GPISD staff and stakeholders identify possible goals for the use of this money. The second thing, by spring of 2023, identify key stakeholders who will participate in the goal setting and recommendations to bring forward to the school board. The third thing, summer of 2023, conduct school board workshops to assess recommendations from stakeholders and prepare for formal board approval of fund expenditures and reinvestment. The fourth thing is communicate with GPISD stakeholders as the district moves forward with the plans for student achievement. And the fifth thing is measure the effectiveness of the plan and continue to seek other outside sources of funding to promote student achievement. That's what we're going to do with the $16 million. Everyone always asks, y'all got all this money, what are y'all going to do? Is the school board going to use it? What are we doing? So now, hopefully the public knows that this is what our plan is for the 16 million. We, since being elected, our strongest Mexican-American Studies class is in GPISD, and I can firmly say that. And I've been one of the strong supporters of our MAS, which is Mexican-American Studies. And we want to thank Mr. Joshua Mock, who started the class. We have African American Studies. We recently passed Native American Studies. So we got it going on in Grand Prairie. If you want to be a teacher, come on. Talk to me, put me as a reference. But we want more teachers. We want more Spanish-speaking teachers. We want more students. Of course, charter schools are taking our kids. And so, if there's any questions, y'all don't beat me down with a lot of questions, go ahead. I'm willing to answer them.
Buenos días. Yo primeramente te quiero felicitar porque de toda la juventud yo conozco a todos los políticos y de los jóvenes el único que ha seguido la política ha sido tú. Y me gusta que tengas un buen puesto y que lo estés reconociendo. Me gustaría que siguieras adelante para que puedas tener un buen puesto. Yo sé que esta junta no es para felicitar a las personas, pero yo felicito mucho al señor Domingo García y al señor Eva García, porque ellos siempre están en las buenas y en las malas con nosotros. Yo tengo 53 años, yo les puedo decir qué clase de políticos tenemos. Y las únicas personas que yo he apoyado y que sé que están con nosotros ha sido siempre Eva García, Domingo García, y las personas que ahorita están ocupando el lugar del LULAC, que también ellos nos ayudan. Así es que yo les digo que sigamos apoyando a la juventud para que sigas adelante y arriba y adelante.
Gracias.
Hey, congratulations again myself, for all the work you do there and everything you're representing us as a community on that board. My question to you this morning is that, of course, we're in the legislative year. There's a lot of things that have been proposed at the legislature this year that, frankly, scares a lot of us. What are you most concerned about that's being talked about in the legislature? What can we, as a community, go and talk to Benton and the other legislators up there about what we're concerned about? And then also, one of the things that we have these sheets out there advertising, we want to take our LULAC youth, like the ones from and others, go visit the state capitol, get to know that they have agency. So all of that big question, can you answer, what are you most concerned about? What should we know that maybe we don't know? Because there's a lot of things that have been talked about, there's a lot of things that maybe haven't. So those two questions, and then also how can LULAC best help?
So, as most of you have noticed my shirt today, my niece made this shirt. She started her own business, and it's the Ubalde Strong. It's the Texas, and all the little hands right here are the students that were slaughtered, and the 2 teachers. So I get very emotional about Ubalde. Don't give me your opinion. Those kids, that should not have happened. So that's my main concern, and I always wear this shirt too around people. And Mendoza made my niece made this shirt, and everyone always wants one. But it's student safety. Student safety. That's why we've created an emergency management team at Grand Prairie ISD schools. That is my main concern. I recommend everyone to call your state rep. We got a great state rep here.
Yes.
And we recommend everyone to start pressuring their state reps, regardless of party, whether you're Democrat or Republican. You call them and send them emails, blow them up, because at this point, they're the ones that make the laws, and they're the ones that can better the situation and make it safer for our kids. Oh, also, the education commissioner, who I'm not really a big fan of, and I've said it publicly all the time, and I'll say it again, that's the person that we need to pressure. And we need to pressure these people by emails, by calls, and at this point, that's where we're at. We try to make things as safe as possible in Grand Prairie schools. And since being elected, our safety has increased. Student safety has increased. And I know we gave our students, that's my main priority, and I think that's what always helped me get re-elected 3 times. And the first election was 60% of the vote, second was 70, the last one was 80. And it's always been student safety, because that's, my main goal and my main concern. How can we make our schools safe? What is safe for our students? And so forth. Hopefully I answered your question.
Good morning. Go ahead, Rick.
How can LULAC help with all?
Oh, LULAC, our GP LULAC council is doing great, taking it to Austin, creating more LULAC councils, getting more students actively involved. Gracie Cortez has done a great job by getting students involved and protest, and that's always, you know, we can always improve on that and getting more students at different schools, creating more LULAC councils and bring change.
We need a grant to help us expand.
And we need a grant, yes, yeah, that's right. I don't disagree.
Give us something.
Good morning. Thank you for all that you do for the community. My question is more classroom related. What is the student-teacher ratio? How many bilingual staff do you have? And how do you deal with disparity? I'm working in a case here in Dallas where a Latina teacher has 28 students, no teacher assistant, and she teaches 4 core subjects. However, her counterparts are African American. They each have 12 or 14 students, and they have a teacher assistant. So how do you deal with this kind of thing in your school district? Because I would like for Dallas ISD to learn from you guys. You're doing it better.
Well, to be honest, that has been a struggle since being elected on the board. I'm not going to say it's great. I'm going to just keep it real. It's hard to get bilingual teachers into the classroom, and that's something that we need to improve our